Okay. So, after making our other batch of hard apple cider with the cinnamon in it, and obviously somebody in the house really likes it.
Who would that be?
No clue. So, decided to make some more, and this is going to be for the Halloween party if it lasts. If not, I'll make more because it's a quick ferment. So, also doing some experiments. This is half brown, dark brown sugar, and the Premier Blanc yeast. All these have cinnamon sticks in it. There's some variations though. So these two are the tried and true method that we did last time. So it's a cup of regular sugar, which is actually sugar in the raw, and the Premier Blanc champagne yeast is in all three of these. This one has a dark brown sugar, and we'll see what kind of different flavors it actually adds to things. So that's the yeast I'm using down there on those. Then these over here are two experiments with the different types of yeast and sugar actually also. So this one is the sugar in the raw, same, all these have a cup of sugar in them, so I'm not taking hydrometer reading once again, don't care. It's more for flavor versus alcohol content, and the alcohol content is obviously there. So I'm using 71B yeast, and it's supposed to save some more of the fruity esters and the fruit flavors and those kinds of things, and be a little more gentle on the fruit aspects of things. So I'm gonna see how it works in these, but this one has sugar and raw, and this one has the dark brown sugar only in this one. So this one's gonna be pretty rich probably. We'll see how the molasses flavors turn out in it. One of the thousands of recipes that I've read out there actually use blackstrap molasses. I think that'd be a little harsh in a 1 gallon. You'd have to really dial it back because it has a tendency to take over in just about anything that you cook, bake. So when you decide with the brown sugar, you still get the molasses aspect of it, but it's more of a back flavor. So we'll see how this one turns out. This one I did half brown sugar and half regular sugar, and you'll see the difference in the flavors. But the yeast is also going to make the difference, and you can kind of tell the activity already started in these. It's been sitting for about 20-30 minutes, and so I'm curious to see which yeast is the most active, which one excuse me, hits the hardest, which one leaves the most flavor of the juices and stuff we use. And then I'm going to do another experiment, since I have a tendency to kind of over experiment with things, like 37 different flavors of jam in 1 year. How many different flavors of soap? Smell, sense of soap? God knows how many.
I tried not to eat the soap.
Yeah, the flavor of soap is terrible. So I'm gonna do a kind of a pirate's booty drink, they call it.
What?
Yeah.
What was that?
Pirate's booty in a sense. It's pirate's rum kind of recipe, but it's going to be a wine instead of an actual rum, because I'm not going to distill anything, because I'm pretty sure it's illegal in South Carolina. But when you're making these, you have to pour off some of the fluid in here to make room for the sugar. Well, that excess I'm not going to waste. I'm actually going to use it into. So this has a cup of brown sugar in it already, 2 cinnamon sticks, the yeast nutrient, which all these have a teaspoon of yeast nutrient in it.
They're hard.
To help spur things up, get things going faster. But this one is the residual from all these placed in here, because like I said, we don't waste. I think it gives me something to play with. So I'm gonna put pineapple juice, what's the cherry one? The black cherry, and some coconut milk actually. So the coconut milk is the only concern I have because it has the fats in it, and it's not real high in fat, but it does have some fats in it, so it may cause it to foam a little bit. But I'm not worried about any kind of issues with it because it's a plant fat. But none of these have any sulfites or fates or sulfurs, nothing in them, no preservatives, they're just pure juice. So they're not going to hamper the growth of the yeast. And with the yeast nutrient in all these, they get rocking pretty fast. I imagine waking up tomorrow and checking the fermenting closet and seeing everything just rocking along. Haven't dealt with this yeast yet, so I'm not sure exactly how aggressive it is. The champagne yeast, pretty freaking aggressive. The last batch we made was done in 6 days. So it's a very quick ferment. Now, It's a young cider, not a real actually young cider. And with the cinnamon in there, it really made a difference, helped balance things out. And we drank another glass of it tonight because it's pretty banging actually. But the longer these age, the more mellow they get. They kind of go through a malolactic fermentation process, which is a bacterial fermentation process that happens later in wines and those kinds of things. The cinnamon sticks add a tiny bit of tannins as well, which gives you a mouthfeel. So it gives you a different mouthfeel, different taste, different flavor. So it changes things up. Now, good friend Troy on Facebook suggested doing a Cider, but it's actually like a however the hell you say it. It's a mead with a spice mead or an apple spice mead. But meads and all, there's like 9,000 different types of meads depending on what you put in the junk. But it's basically an apple spiced mead. So it's gonna be with honey, apple juice, cinnamon sticks, and let that ferment. I imagine, like most meads, you may have to let it ferment a little longer before it balances. Maybe a quick ferment because it's all juice and honey. I'm not sure on that. I have to check into that and see what the general consensus is out there. But fermentation varies so much on your temperature in your house, the amount of sugars that you put in here. You can actually over sugar a ferment and hamper the yeast from actually growing properly. You can't over pitch a yeast, or can't put too much yeast into a product, but you can't put too little. And too little in the first stages of yeast growth, it's literally propagation. It's just growing more and more colonies. You're getting the colony bigger and bigger and bigger. So that's why you shake up your must and all at the beginning to get aeration in there to let it go ahead and start making babies. Well, the second stage starts where you have all the CO2 in there, the oxygen is pretty much depleted, and then it starts turning into the alcohols. You start getting all your ethanols and stuff in there, and that's where you get you don't have as much growth on the yeast, but you have more alcohol and more consumption of the sugars. So your temperature makes a big difference in how your yeast is going to do, and honestly what your ingredients are. If you're not going to drink it and you're not going to eat it, don't ferment with it. Pretty simple concept. Better quality ingredients, better quality product on the outcome, typically. There's always stuff that can happen. So if these get somehow, which I doubt they will, over 10% or so, when we rack them into the other jugs and put them in the fridge, we're technically cold crashing them at that point, and any residual yeast and stuff kind of go into hibernation. They settle down to the bottom. It's called flocculation, where I'll get the yeast cake on the bottom. You would technically bottle them after that, and then either cold crash them or let them ferment a little longer if there's any residual yeast that want, or any residual sugars that the yeast want to eat and carbonate, and then pasteurize. Leaving it on the lees, on the cake at the bottom, is not a terrible thing on a lot of fermentations, but it can leave some off-putting flavors over a period of time. That's dead yeast in the bottom. Another thing that, if you're using a must with fruit fly, go figure, I don't know why he's here. If you're using like fruit and stuff like that on your first fermentation, on your step one, you want to swirl it and get basically keep that the fruit layer on top moist, but you're also degassing. So the byproduct of yeast is CO2. That's waste. Nobody likes swimming in their own waste. That's just grody. So by swirling it, it degasses it, and you don't end up with also bottle bombs. When you go ahead and bottle this stuff up, it degasses before you actually do it. But it also doesn't introduce more oxygen. So Acinetobacter is in everything. So fruit flies bring it in to make your vinegars and stuff, but you have to have alcohol and with Acinetobacter, or acid or whatever. So acid producing bacteria. So if you add more oxygen, then you have a possibility of making a vinegar. So technically we could turn these into vinegar. All I have to do is continue to aerate it. After it's done fermenting and get some alcohol in there, not done fermenting, but fermented the sugars out of this, and just go ahead and pop the top off. You can actually take an aerator if you want and put it in there and continue with an aeration and make a very quick apple cider vinegar. Yeah, but you can actually just leave it off. A lot of places you actually just apple scrap vinegar, let the fruit flies get on it. They bring a lot of the bacteria with them. I know it's grody, but that's the way Mother Nature does these things. and you end up with apple cider vinegar. And if you think that little bottle of Bragg's apple cider vinegar that you have sitting up there wasn't produced in the very beginning with fruit flies, you're joking yourself, because I'm pretty sure they were in the very beginning. Like most scrap vinegars are produced. So this is our project for now. Next is going to be rice wine. I just got my little big mouth fermenters in. Got 3 of them. They're gallon, 1.4 gallon fermenters for stage 1, and we'll cook up the sweet rice tomorrow. We'll go through that process and show you how that's done, and hopefully it'll come out good. From everything I've read, it's been pretty amazing, honestly, for a very short fermentation, very young ferment, very young wine, and I'm curious to see what's going to happen with that one. So there you go. That's what we're doing this evening. So folks, as always, stay happy.
Stay happy.